Thank you for tuning into our podcast. We are coming to you from Chicopee, Massachusetts. I am your host, Carrie, and joining me is Holyoke's very own local historian and creator of the historical tours of Greater Holyoke, Robert Camus. He offers both public and private tours, as well as presentations of the local canal systems, reservoirs, cemeteries, and churches, as well as various parks and streets in Holyoke, South Hadley, and Chicopee, Mass. Now you actually lead these tours and give these presentations yourself, is that correct?
That's right.
And today he'll be educating us on the Holyoke Warp Company. So what is the history of the Holyoke Warp Company?
Okay, the Holyoke Warp Company is one of the older companies of Holyoke. It was made in the year 1869 as a weaving machine firm. They would actually make these machines that you could weave cotton or wool or silk, so forth, out of. They were an instrument or equipment making company. And what we're going to talk about in this presentation is where the company, what the history is, where it was located, what production was like inside these mills, and then what came of the mill after that company left. But the history of this mill is very interesting because they would make these machines and sell them off around the company. Of course, Massachusetts was the center of the Industrial Revolution within the United States. And so this company sold machines around the United States, but a lot of them in Massachusetts. And warp is a term that is part of the production process. It's only two terms, warp and weave. The warp is when you when you put the strands out in one direction only. That is going to be called the warp strand. And the warp strand is out there first, out of two. Now, it's got to be lifted up to get the weave strand through. Now, the process of taking that warp strand upwards is called warp. And the process of putting the weave strand through is called the weave. And so what happens is a shuttlecock that goes through, say, right to left and then left to right. And when it does, they have to pull the strands up and on one side, and then the next strand next to it to pull it down. So you have a weave coming through the two. And as you go, so you have many warps up and warps down at the same time. Then the shuttlecock goes through, and then it comes back the other way. Now, I've seen this process going on a documentary film, and it's so fast you never get to see the shuttlecock. It's so quickly gone through. Even in the machines 150 years ago, it was so quick. That is incredible. So the warp is there first, just waiting for it, and then it warp up these strands, and the weave comes through, and you got the fabric binded together. And you got to advance it a little bit each time, and you got cloth being made. It's quite a fabulous look. And of course, this process is nowadays very digitized, computerized, and there's no clothing made in the United States anymore, so it's all made out of overseas. You get a lot of lower cost labor there. But that's what this company did, made those machines.
And where was the work company located?
Okay, the company was located between two very large companies. It was on Main Street. It was near the second level canal, and it was taking water from that second level canal and distributing back into the very tip of the third level canal. So it took some of the water. Now, it was between the Merrick Mill number 1 and the Holyoke Machine Company. It was a tiny company, but it didn't do anything very sophisticated. It just made warp machines. And that's it. And then they sold them. But even that was an incredible process, and we'll talk about it along the way.
So quickly, before we continue with the rest of our interview, just to fill our listeners in, if you want to find out more information or sign up for any of his various tours, you can check out his website at holyokecanaltour.org. And there he has both videos of the various stops along each tour, and also past and present photos of the historical sites throughout as well. And if you're interested in setting up a private tour, you can email him directly at bobcat4214, capital B, at yahoo.com. And they're perfect for fun and educational outdoor activities for the whole family, or for your group parties, especially those special occasions and get-togethers. And they are also good just for getting outdoors for the day. So, getting back to our interview, what was production like at this mill?
Okay, production was very simple in terms of what they did. It was a very tiny company, and what they did, it was made all the apparatus. And most of the apparatus was either metal or wood. And so the frame basically was made of very strong wood that they would put varnish into to solidify it and make it secure. And then the other pieces were very wrought iron or very heavy duty steel because it was going to get a lot of use and it had to be ready for that. And then it had the holders on both ends that would hold the warp strands in place very close together. And then it would have on the very two sides of it, the shuttlecock would go through one side to the next very quickly. And so a lot was going on very quickly. Now, the machinery, let me tell you a little bit about the machinery. It was very strong. I would say it's about maybe 8 feet long by about 5 feet wide. Now, I'll give you some sense of what they had to do. They had on the fourth floor of their small factory, they had the beaming done. That's where you made the wooden beams. And then on the third floor, you would have the warping done. And that's where you would make the, the holders for the strands. And then you need the spinning done on the second floor and then the carding done on the first floor. So this was a great factory. They had a lot of side rooms to, they were using power room. That was in the front, very near the second level canal. They had a blacksmith shop, right, and they had lots of storage rooms, so forth. So a lot was being done very quickly. Now these machines were incredible, so this is great that Holyoke had this.
And what has become of this mill?
Okay, the mill itself is no longer there, but along the way, it existed from 1869 to about early 1900s, maybe 1905, 1910. By 1915, it was taken over by a mill called the Highland Paper Mill, and they made paper inside there. So that was a drastic difference from going from a equipment making room to the Highland Paper Mill. And then that company, they stayed a long time themselves. They stayed into the 1960s, and then they went away. A lot of paper companies did in the 1960s. And it has been taken down since then. I don't know why they would take it down. It was very small compared to two giant mills next to it. And so sadly, one of the important and really cool equipment of Holyoke is now gone.
And thank you, Robert, for educating us on your tours. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. And you can tune into a large selection of our other podcasts and much more on his website. And again, that is holyokecanaltour.org.